Birds 365. Or you can go ahead and hit that like button. That's Mike Gill. That's Mike Gill right there, right now. So there's no reason you shouldn't hit that like button because everybody likes Mike Gill, right, Johnny Mac?
Oh, they should. I don't know if everybody likes Mike, but they should.
Is that the consensus?
The consensus is the same between the two Mac and Max and Mike Gill. Yeah, some people like us a lot. Others can't stand us a little bit, but they still stream in anyway. So we got to say thanks for at least that. All right, Johnny Mac just said before you jumped in with us that he was on your show last week, and before the announcement came down that Dennard Wilson was not going to be back on Eagles staff this year, he said, yeah, but he's not going to be back on Eagles staff this year, that this is a foregone conclusion. The guillotine just hasn't come down yet, whether it's self-inflicted guillotine or an Eagles drop guillotine. If Johnny Mac said that, then he was right. Not only is he off the Eagles, but he's already on the Ravens. Are you surprised the way this whole thing went down, Mike Gill?
I wouldn't say I'm surprised. I mean, you got like a scorned lover here who thought they were the mistress. They thought you were going to get rid of your wife, and then you were going to ask her to kind of take her place, and it never happens. And then all of a sudden they're like, we've had this affair going on. You told me you were going to leave your wife. You did leave your wife. And now you're not asking me to move into the house. So I could see the thing spiraling out of control from here. That just popped into my head. I don't know how that happened. It didn't actually happen in my real life, by the way. But
yeah, that I wasn't going to go down that route. It's more like being in a family business and they went outside the family to sort of jump over.
I can understand like Wilson being, him thinking I'm the next in line here. You just did it on the offensive side of the ball. You gave that guy the promotion. Why not me? I had some support from others. And then you would think, now this is where it gets murky, is did he get fired? Did they just basically, there's some people who think that he wanted to stay. I don't know how accurate that is, but did he want to stay and the Eagles didn't want him to come back? Did the Eagles just say, no, we're not interested in having you back? But we've talked about this a lot. When Andy started to lose coaches, that's when things started to get a little dirty around here in the Andy Reid years. He had this great staff, and then when people started to poach, when he had to try to replace them, they had some down years because they didn't have the best coaching staffs out there. And, we'll see what ends up happening because of you've lost now, 3-4 coaches from this staff in one offseason. Andy used to use like one at a time. He just lost – what's this? 3, 4?
5 coaches.
Yeah,
including the quality control.
Well, yes, and then
quality
right. I don't know how big a loss that is, but 5 legit coaches, 2 coordinators, a linebacker coach, and a defensive back coach. That's a pretty good poaching off season, Mike Gill.
There's no question. Yeah. And you asked, so the question I guess would be, did this happen because Nick handled it poorly, or did this happen as an amicable split?
I don't think he handled it poorly, and I don't think it was, this is how I described it to Jody, in that, look, Nick thought what he did was the right thing to do for the Eagles. He thinks Sean Desai is going to be a better defensive coordinator, and maybe he's right. But if you're Dennard Wilson, you're saying, all right, what else can I do? We have the number 1 ranked passing defense. I'm in charge of the secondary. I had, big personalities like Slay and Gardner-Johnson on the same page. Everybody had a career year with the exception of Slay. Think about it. Bradbury, as good as he was at times in Carolina and the Giants, that was his best year. He was never an all-pro before. He was an all-pro. Avonte Maddox was a good player, and he was injured for, too much of the year. But when he was on the field, never played better. Chauncey, not even close career year. Marcus, not even close career year. If I'm Dennard Wilson, I'm saying to myself, well, what else can I do to prove myself? And as I also pointed out to Jody, Mike, they said they wanted to keep Jonathan Gannon so much that they offered to pay him more than he's getting paid by the Arizona Cardinals. And if I'm Dennard Wilson, You're bringing this guy, trying to bring this guy back at that level, and I'm his right-hand man, and then you go outside the organization? There's nothing else I can do to prove myself to you, so I'm going to leave. That's how I would have taken it if I were Dennard Wilson.
Right. So you don't think he actually wanted to stay?
No, not for a second. And that's what I said. Once they made the decision, and I have no problem with Nick's decision. He can do what he wants, and he thinks that's the right way to go. And ultimately, it'll be up to Sean Desai to prove that. Once he made that decision, it was over for Dennard.
Well, and he got a job instantaneously. I mean, is that his side saying, hey, Dennard wanted to stay. He's a great guy. He's a good soldier. He wanted to stay. And then the Ravens say, yeah, you sound like a great guy. Why don't you come down I-95 and join us?
Yeah, I mean, Marcus is a very good reporter. I said, obviously he got that information from somebody. I don't know who he got it from. It's strange. I will say that it's strange. And then, as Jody pointed out, Reuben Frank says Dennard told the Eagles out in Indy he wasn't coming back. That one makes more sense to me. I will say that because I thought, but I could be wrong. I thought the minute they hired Sean Desai, Dennard Wilson was gone.
That makes sense. Is, hey, I was up for the job, I didn't get it, and it would just be weird for me to, even if it was just like, hey, no hard feelings, it would just be weird. I was up for that job, I didn't get it on that level.
But let me paint one scenario that is a possibility. And again, we're getting out here on a limb, but it's a fun conversation to have. Perhaps if I'm Dennard Wilson, you say Dennard had to go. As soon as he gets passed off, he got to go. But he wants to work this year, and he's under contract, and he's going to have his agent out there as soon as he finds out he's not getting the Eagles defensive coordinator gig. Well, what other gig is there out there for me? In the meantime, you hold on to the job you got. My father taught me that lesson when I was 17 or 18 years old. You don't quit a job until you have another job in place. You don't just quit because, I don't like my job anymore, and then you're unemployed. So you line up your next job before you quit the job that you're presently in. And maybe Dennard Wilson was going to go down that road, that his goal was to land somewhere else, but he wasn't there yet. So he told the Eagles, all right, well, I'll be back as the DB coach. I'm disappointed, but I'm not quitting on you guys. And they turn around and quit on him anyway.
Well, that's why you end up with 8 jobs at the same time, Jody.
And I got a couple jobs. They overlapping is not the worst thing in the world.
Well, here's what, I agreed. I said, the small door that Dennard would have stayed would be that he didn't get a job somewhere else. But again, he's in charge of the number 1 passing defense in the NFL, where everybody in the NFL can't stop the pass, as evident by the fans who think the Eagles can't stop the pass. He was always getting another job, even with the timing. You can make up a title, right? Defensive passing game coordinator, assistant head coach. Somebody was always coming to get Dennard Wilson. And that was borne out by Baltimore almost immediately going out and getting Dennard Wilson.
He had enough of a, that sometimes when you don't have that job, you take a chance on yourself. He had enough reason to take a chance on himself to say, you know what? I don't need this job anymore. You didn't value me the way you should. I'm out of here. And watch, I'll get another job tomorrow. When you walk into your boss and say, I want more money. No, you don't deserve more money. Well, then I'm leaving and I'm going to get another job tomorrow. And that place is going to have way better revenue because I'm there now. When you have that bet on yourself, Dennard Wilson his agent had to be saying, look, I can get you a job tomorrow. If you want to leave, get out of there.
Yeah.
And that may very well be the way that it shook out. All right, Mike Gill, you're a good guy to have on today because your show down the shore certainly talks Eagles, but you also get New York fans on your phones because some New Yorkers or North Jersey people get all the way down to AC.
They get a lot of Jets recently, Jody. A lot of Jets recently.
Yeah.
Really? Oh, geez. I'm so torn because I'm an Aaron Rodgers fan, but I think he's gone off the deep end, and I think he's checked out of life.
Yeah, he's
the
off the
way
reservation.
he really is. So, despite his talent level, I'm not sure I want any part of him on the Jets. But no, I want to talk about that other New York quarterback. That would be Daniel Jones, 4-year, $160 million contract. The devil is in the details. I've seen varying reports on it. Sounds more like a 2-year, $80+ million contract, dressed up as a potential 3-year deal. Really no shot at a full 4-year deal. What was the feedback on the Giants getting the contract done that they needed to right up against the deadline? Otherwise, they probably would have thrown a franchise tag on Daniel Jones. What was the take on the Giants getting the deal done with Jones?
It was lukewarm from the Giants fans, but I'll tell you, the Eagles fans, which we, obviously have probably about 75% in the audience, were happy. I mean, it was like, okay, the Giants have decided to stick down this road of good but not great. And I talked about the fact that you're in the NFL, you kind of get stuck in this situation where there's only so many of this level quarterbacks that everybody yearns to get. There's only so many of them, yet everyone's on the hamster wheel trying to get one. What do you do when you don't have one and then you aren't in position to get one, similar to where the Giants are? You come up with a deal like this where, okay, we're going to give you money that we probably don't want to give you, but we're going to make it look like you're getting more years when you're really not, and we can get out of that deal after 2 more years of evaluation. So I think the Giant fans seem lukewarm on it, kind of like, what else were we going to do? Now, this is an offseason where I guess there were some options, but what option were you taking? Are they going to get in you have to have $60 million of cap space to be able to go get Aaron Rodgers. You have to have that on available the day you get him. So I don't think that was a realistic possibility. Is Derek Carr a huge upgrade for similar money from Daniel Jones? So I think they were kind of resolved to the fact that, what else were we going to do in this? And that's what happens. When they made the playoffs last year, they put themselves in a position where they could not improve that position. And, same thing in Seattle. They were in a situation. Now they have the 5th pick in the draft, Seattle, by the way, so they can take a quarterback if they want. But this quarterback goes out and has his best year ever. Now, Daniel Jones, the question is, what do they view him as a quarterback? Is he a passer? Is he a runner? Is he just a game manager? Does he lead this team? You take Saquon Barkley off that team, then what is he? So that one, I think, was lukewarm from the Giant fans, and I think the Eagles fans are rejoicing, thinking, okay, the Giants are just going to kind of be stuck in this 9-8 rut.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of agree with Giant fans because I'm not the biggest Daniel Jones fan. Give him credit. He outplayed my expectations this year.
Yeah.
I've said he's a bottom 10 quarterback since he came into the league, and he got legitimately into the middle of the pack in the NFL this year. He's not a top 10 yet, but he's middle of the pack.
The question might be for him, similar to Jalen. If they go out and get a couple receivers this offseason, they had no receivers. They had nothing for him last year. How much does that improve him from the middle of the pack? Can he go into Kirk Cousins area? Can he be like a top 10 guy, 12? If he gets – now, the problem is there's no receiver in free agency. Could they get in the DeAndre Hopkins trade? Do they bring back Odell Beckham? There's not really a receiver in this draft that's going to turn your offense around right off the bat. So that's the problem. Is I don't know, unless they could do something like the Eagles did last year, make a trade. I don't see where they get that player, but does getting that level of talent raise his level of play?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough decision. I understand why the Giants did it, but in a lot of ways, I think they just paid for overachieving. I think that's what you get for overachieving. Yeah, they were better than certainly I expected. Most people expected. Brian Daboll deserves a lot of credit. Did he elevate Daniel Jones? I don't think Daniel Jones is a star quarterback. I can say that. And by the way, he didn't get a star quarterback contract. We're going to see star quarterback contracts when Jalen signs and Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. Then you're going to see star quarterback contracts. So,
and keep this in mind. Keep this in mind. The Giants, much like the people who said the Eagles didn't play anybody all year, they played less. I mean, their schedule was the same as their divisions. They're going to the AFC East next year. So all 4 of these teams are going to have to play Buffalo, Miami, the Jets, and the Patriots. And what do they play this? The NFC. I can't remember which NFC division they play next year, but both of them are. I think it's the West. Actually, is it the West?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, they're going out west a lot.
So there's the Giants went 9-8 playing against a schedule that everybody said, well, you didn't play anybody this year. Well, next year you're not going to get the same people saying you didn't play anybody. So that 9-8 record,
you know, the schedule's the schedule, and you know, I don't blame him for that. I think, you know, but I do think, you know, his best 2 games are probably against Minnesota, who had the 31st or 30, I forget it was 31st or 32nd pass defense. And then he came into Philadelphia against, again, a pass defense that can't play and didn't do much. So I don't think he's a star quarterback, but I think the Giants are in that sort of pickle. What do you do?
Yeah.
And they made the right decision. They can get out of it in 2 years, and I think they probably will, to be honest, get out of it in 2 years. I want to bring you back in-house, Mike, because another thing we discussed before you came on was CJ Gardner-Johnson. Obviously, yesterday was franchise tag day. The Eagles didn't use it, as is their typical way of doing business. And CJ went on Twitter, as he's apt to do, and a lot of people took it. What it was, he said, all love Billy, green heart, Eagles emoji. A lot of people said he was saying goodbye. Was he saying goodbye?
No, this I asked you, I think, about Hargrave had something similar yesterday where he had 1 week with a grimacing face and tears strolling out of the eyes. And I said, well, is that him saying this is my last week as an Eagle? You can't read anything into these social media posts. I think they enjoy getting people stirred up and having them in frenzy over the fact that, oh, I put this cryptic tweet out there. They're going to talk about my tweet for 5 minutes. I mean, look, I think
you're going to get all the adulation. You're going to say, please come back, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, we need you. You're the guy. He wants to go show the Eagles, hey, look, I said I might leave, and look at all the people who don't want me to leave. CJ Gardner, look, we talked about this. The Eagles have used the tag 5 times in their history. They weren't using the tag, and I probably smartly they didn't use the tag. Now, can they get a deal done with CJ Gardner-Johnson? Is someone going to come over the top and make him a deal that he can't refuse? There's a good possibility that him, Hargrave, and Bradbury all get deals that the Eagles just cannot match. Now, which one of them did they prioritize to say we might go outside the box? Probably Gardner-Johnson. He's only 24 years old, so that might be the guy they say, all right, we can invest a little bit more because he's younger. He can play multiple positions. Bradbury, 30, Hargrave, 30. We'll let those two go. We'll put a little bit extra into Gardner-Johnson, but they don't want to use that tag to mess the cap situation up.
Which plays out more, youth or the Eagles' overall philosophy on how they like to spend money and where they like spending it? Because if it's following their modus operandi, then it's Hargrave who's going to get the money. Because and get into the trenches, Howie Roseman.
I agree. Yeah, I brought this up as well, Jody, that's the one thing that holds me up on Hargrave is that is the position that they do value, and they're thin there. I mean, look, if they lose Hargrave and Fletcher Cox, they're basically starting. You got Jordan Davis, Milton Williams, and Marlon Tuipulotu. You're basically starting from scratch at that position. So they say, you know what? We'll reinvest back into that spot and kind of go from there. So I think Hargrave, I think I said it last week on your show, I wouldn't have been surprised if he was the guy they decided on just because of the organization's philosophy of building in the trenches, and they got to keep that trench strong. Look, you got Fletcher and Hargrave both possibly walking out, but they're both aging at the same time. Those guys are both. Fletcher Cox is certainly not the Fletcher Cox he was 5 years ago. So he's going to take another dip down. Brandon Graham, if you bring him back, right?
He didn't take much of a dip last year, Mike. $14 million. That wasn't a major dip he took.
I'm not talking about a dip in pay. I'm talking about a dip in production.
Oh, production. Right? Okay, my bad.
Right, where one of these years, look, I know people already think Fletcher Cox is taking a dip in production, and he has because he's not getting 11 sacks. He's getting 6, but at what point does he go just down to where he's basically, a rotational player? that time's going to come, and the Eagles really have to balance. Is that going to happen this year? That happens overnight a lot, but when is that going to happen? And look, they're aging on that defensive line. We talked with Brandon Graham. They bring him back. He's another guy who is he going to give 11 sacks again next year? I don't know.
Yeah, all those career years, I talk about it all the time. I mean, it's really hard to duplicate those and have those consistently back to back, and especially with somebody like Brandon at his age. But you know all the names, Mike, and Howie has been on the record twice already that, hey, we're going to lose players. We're going to get 2024 compensatory picks. So be prepared, he's essentially said to Eagles fans. But that doesn't mean they're going to lose everybody. We just talked about the two biggest names. If I gave you, so we'll throw for this exercise, we'll throw Javon and Chauncey out of the equation because they're the two most high profile. If I said two guys are going to stay, two guys are going to leave, definitely. Who you giving me?
I think that's a really hard one, man, because like TJ Edwards would seem like a guy that would stay, but then some wonky team out there might come over the top and just
Arizona. Look at Arizona. Yeah.
Right. Might just offer him a lot of money where he's like, you know, the Eagles don't want to pay a lot of money. And if someone says, hey, we're going to give you $2 million extra to come here. So Edwards would be one that I would think, because he's like, they found him, right? They kind of take some pride in the fact that they uncovered this guy and he's turned into a really player. But I think someone's going to pay Edwards. So I'll say Epps. And I know that's not an exciting name, but he's another guy that they didn't find. I mean, he came from Minnesota, but they've kind of gave him from a special teamer to a starter. And he's not going to make a lot of money. So he's a starting player that you don't have to pay a lot of money. So I think he'll be one. And you talk about just on defense?
No, anything. Two going, two staying. Most of their free agents are on the defensive side, though.
Yeah, right. I'm going to surprise people a little wild card here. And I'll say that Miles Sanders is back because
that's a big one. Yeah.
A lot of teams have franchised their running backs, and there's a lot of, so I think that the market's just not going to be there. He wants to be here, and I think they'll get him back in a deal that they're comfortable with, and that'll probably quiet all the Bijan Robinson conversation that seems to be out there with all these mock drafts putting him at number 10.
People never learn with these running backs.
So I'll say Miles Sanders will be back. So Epps and Sanders, and the two guys I think are gone is Bradbury, and I think TJ Edwards is definitely the other guy, because I just think he's going to get paid a lot of money, and the Eagles are not going to pay that position. They have Nakobe Dean, and they're okay with it.
I think you got a pretty good grasp on it, but I'm going to ask you a question that flies in the face of what you just said.
Yeah.
Let's say Miles does get an offer. There's a team out there that give them a 2-year, $14 million deal. And Eagles just aren't going to go there because they don't value the running back position enough. Bijan Robinson at all. Is Kenny Gainwell good enough to be the Eagles' lead back? He was for the last couple of weeks of the season. The Super Bowl, Miles makes that bad decision. First carry, bounces it outside, should have stayed inside, hurts his hand. It ends up being Gainwell gets more carries than him in the biggest game of the year. I like Kenny Gainwell. I like him in the role that he serves for the Philadelphia Eagles. I think he's one of those guys where if you give him more, he will perform less. I think they need another running back. You're right. Miles Sanders is the guy. All right, they're fine. But if Miles is out the door, is Kenny Gainwell good enough to be the Eagles' lead back next year?
I agree with you. I like the role he's in, but I think that role could expand. Does that mean he can be the guy or just an expansion of his role as the secondary guy? Howie Roseman said when he spoke, a week ago, we like where he's at, but we don't think he's hit his ceiling yet. So do they view him that there's more, or do they view him like we're viewing him? We like him in this role, but we think that role can expand, but not to be the main guy. I don't know that he can be the main guy, and I don't think they view him as the main guy. I think they view him as the guy here, but with just a little bit more responsibility. Because quite frankly, guys, I think we all think he had been disappointing in the role that he had been playing in For most of the season, we thought we were going to get more from Kenny Gainwell. The last 2 years, when they drafted this guy, this is a guy who, virtually played some wide receiver at Memphis just because of necessity. They had so many running backs there. He hasn't caught the ball at all in this offense, right? He's not catching the ball out of the backfield. He's not showing that dual threat capability. So I think Roseman's right when they say the ceiling is higher for Gainwell. I just don't think it's 18 carry guy plus, he's not Christian McCaffrey.
No, and I think you're right. I compared it to an old Sugar Ray Leonard boxing round. I think everybody forgot Kenny was so good late that everybody forgot, hey, he had a pretty bad season. People were disappointed. He didn't step up. And I think you're right. I think he's great in his role. I think the Eagles are going to bring in a lead back. I'm not with you. I don't think Miles is going to be back, but I think they're going to bring in a lead back. It could be the draft. It could be, somebody getting salary cap elsewhere. There's some young backs on the market that can go a little bit cheaper. So I think he's going to be part of the mix, but I don't think he's going to be the lead back. At Mike Gill's show, 97.3 ESPN South Jersey, the Sports Bash every day 2 to 6. I'll be part of that today at 3 o'clock, I believe. I get everything mixed up, Mike. So I'll leave you with this. We talk so much about Dennard Wilson, Jonathan Gann, and Sean Desai. We kind of just overlook the shift from Shane Steichen to Brian Johnson. And there's going to be, more. It's Nick Sirianni's offense, so there's going to be more continuity. But I always tell Jody, man, I thought Shane Steichen was a heck of a play caller. I think he had a feel for it. And I think the assumption that there's not going to be any kind of hiccup may not necessarily be correct. Agree with that? Disagree?
Oh, there's always the possibility, right? It's not like this guy's shifting right in and you're taking Steichen's, he has a voice box there and you're just holding it up and letting him recall the plays. Somebody new is calling these plays. So his feel and his, rhythm of a game may be way different. He might have similar philosophies, similar styles, similar terminology, but that doesn't mean it's coming out the same on game day. And look, everything changes in the moment. Down and distance changes the play. Down and distance changes the philosophy. So you're getting a completely, even though you could have the exact same playbook with the exact same calls, names, that doesn't mean the calls are going to be the same because a new guy's calling them. You hope that the guy sitting right next to him all season long kind of gets a feel of, hey, in this situation, this is where Shane might like to go. Well, I might like to try this. So, no, there's going to be a little bit of change. I think the key would be, though, are you keeping the same terminology? You don't have to learn a whole new offense. That was the big thing with Jalen last year. Well, this is the first time he's in the offense, the same coordinator. Well, now he's got another new coordinator. So they try to keep it as similar as possible. Doesn't mean it's going to be exactly the same, but as similar as possible. And look, this whole offense is back. And that was the one reason why I think Miles possibly – I'm kind of 50-50 with Miles. I just think that he's not going to get the deal that he thinks he's going to get. Maybe he doesn't think he's going to get a big deal. Maybe he looked around and said, geez, these guys all got franchised. Now that moves him up the pecking order because there's less guys. But do people want to pay him that number 1A running back number? And he might be like, whoa, I thought I was going to get more money than this. And the Eagles say, hey, well, if you want to come back here for $7 million a year, there's a home for you.
Yeah, he does move up the rankings of the running backs who are free agents, but now there are jobs that aren't available. The Raiders, the Giants, and the Cowboys. Well, probably not the Cowboys because they still got Zeke there, but they could have been teams on the look for a running back, but they won't be coming into this offseason. All right, Mike Gill, need your help with this. I'm going to go out on a limb and say we don't get an announcement today of the new Jalen Hurts contract agreement with the Philadelphia Eagles. Not going to happen today. And probably not tomorrow. And I'll really go out on a limb and say we get information on what the soreness is in Andrew Painter's elbow before Jalen signs his new contract. Another thing they can't just understand a little bit. When's the date You can give me a week. It doesn't have to be a one individual date, but about what time do we officially say, yeah, why hasn't this gotten done? Is there trouble in paradise? Can we actually start getting nervous? Now, there's some Eagle fans that are nervous already, but they're the panic group. Realistic Eagle fans who can legitimately say, yeah, we should have had this done. This should have gotten done by now. What are we waiting on? What are the Eagles or Jalen or the negotiation? Why is it still not done at this stage? When is it legitimately okay to be concerned that there's a holdup with the Eagles and Jalen Hurts?
Well, you just said it. I mean, a lot of times the fans are going to say, why isn't this done already? Look, here's the problem. I think Kyler Murray signed a deal was like in July of what, last year? Did he sign that deal? July of last year? It was like July of last year. So you're talking about into the summertime that they did it. So the problem with this one is you've got Herbert and Burrow, and you just had Daniel Jones who've got one done. But you're kind of, everyone's in limbo. They don't want to be the first team to do it, or they want to be the first team to do it.
Eagles want to be first.
Right. They want to be the first team to do it. So they want to try to set the market here. So with Hurts, Jody, I would think that would be earlier then, because I'm going off of Murray. Last year was July. I think with Hurts, you probably want to try to get it done a little earlier. So I would say around, you told me to give you like a week area. The draft is the 27th. I'll say like the week leading up to the draft, I would think, you know, but I don't think there's a reason to panic. This is just kind of, hey, listen, we got to play the game here a little bit, but I'm sure they're having conversation about getting this thing done. It's just crossing the I, dotting the I's, crossing the T's before they make it happen. But I'd say sometime in like mid-April.
Okay, so April is when we can legitimately say, yeah, what's the holdup here? Do we have right to be worried?
Well, yeah, I mean, keep in mind, you got free agency starting next week, and I would imagine they have to have some number in mind that they're paying Jalen Hurts to work around free agency. So I'm sure this is all being kind of discussed, right?
I mean, they have.
So they get the free agency done, and once they're done free agency, then they kind of pack him in there with the number that they felt, you know, that was going to be, you know, probably 50.
Yeah, I mean, the Eagles. Carson was in June. I remember that it was early June when they gave Carson his big extension, and that kind of came out of nowhere. But the luxury the Eagles have is Joe Burrow's on Cincinnati. I've mentioned this before. Justin Herbert's on the Chargers. And those are two organizations that aren't going to race to the finish line when it comes to paying big money. Because remember, for people that don't know, when you sign these big contracts and you put out these outrageous financial guarantees, what happens with quarterbacks, one of the issues is all of that guaranteed money has to go in escrow that day.
Yeah.
That day. So if you guarantee Kyler Murray $160 million, $160 million has got to go into escrow. It's not like you can say, oh, we promise we're going to pay that. It's got to go into escrow.
Now, does that happen with every contract in the league, John? Or is there a number that if you're above this is what you have to put in
contract in the league? So it's only a problem with quarterbacks, typically.
Every contract.
Yeah, every single contract.
That's what happened. That's what happened with Khalil Mack with the Raiders. They just didn't have the money to put in escrow.
Exactly.
They couldn't put the money in escrow for him, and they had to get rid of him because they didn't have the guaranteed money up front to bring him back, so they had to trade him.
Yeah. And there are certain NFL owners who aren't as liquid as other NFL owners, and you know, the David Teppers of the world and the Stan Kroenkes of the world, it's never a problem. For a lot of NFL owners, it's a
new
problem.
Owners of the Denver Broncos can do that escrow
they'll
thing.
be in that category as well. Whoever buys Washington as well, if that ever happens. So there's a bunch of owners that, you know, it's a blip on the radar. Mark Davis, probably the best example. Glad you brought up Khalil Mack. Probably Cincinnati, the second best example. They don't have that kind of money. So they got to worry about that kind of stuff. And Jeffrey Lurie's sort of in between. He'll be fine. But yeah, it's a big problem with these quarterback contracts. And one of the reasons why everybody's screaming about collusion with Lamar Jackson, it's not collusion. We don't want to go down that route. And that's why everybody was pissed off at Jimmy Haslam. Because I don't have 200 and how much was it? 200 and
over 250.
250, 252, I think. I don't have $252 million to put in escrow. A lot of owners don't have that, believe it or not.
But we will hear that collusion complaint and or potential lawsuit, depending on how these Lamar negotiations go. And they've already come out of the blocks with teams going, yeah, not us. Don't call us. We'll call you, or we won't be calling. It'd be very interesting to see. And I think that will have at least a tangential effect on the negotiation with Jalen Hurts. Mike Gill, always a pleasure. We appreciate it whenever you come on. If you're not doing anything next Wednesday, we'd love to have you back again.
I'm always here, man. I'm always here, sipping coffee on the porch.
You are the man. Mike Gill from the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN Radio, down the shore, here with us on Birds 365. All right, Mac coming back. Hour number 2, the Prince of Darkness. Bob Groats from the Delco Time will be hopping on with us. I don't know if he'll have an ode to James Bradbury today, since it's looking like he's not going to be back. He didn't take the social media the way that CJ Gardner-Johnson did, but I think there's less of a chance.
Groats might think he's back on a 1-year prove-it deal again. Yeah,
that's true, because not as big a fan of his talent evaluation as some of the others of us are. Bob Groats coming up in less than 20 minutes from now. I want to expand the conversation with Lamar Jackson, with J-Mac when we get back here. The whole collusionary talk and the fact that teams came right out of the box yesterday and said, yeah, we're not involved. We're not going to get involved with teams that don't have a quarterback. Certainly not a quarterback as good as Lamar Jackson. John gave you a reason why. Some of them may explain as to why they are not going to have interest in it. And how is Lamar going to handle this? To this point, all he knows is he thinks Ravens aren't willing to do this. They're stiffing me. Shame on them, because I've given them an MVP. I've kept them relevant. I've won a ton of games. My winning percentage is the best of any starting quarterback in the league, and they're just cheapskates. When other teams in the league start saying the same thing, he's going to have to come to the realization that he's going to have a tough time getting that same guaranteed money that Deshaun Watson did. He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. Appreciate you being tuned here to Mac on